The sun bore down like it had something to prove. Heat shimmered off the asphalt, warping the distance, baking every inch of my weathered hand. I slid out from under the old pickup, my legs aching, hips stiff but movements still precise, muscle memory, stubbornness, and a socket wrench in my grip. The engine had coughed twice before dying on the incline a half-mile from the camp cedar perimeter. I'd steered it down into the ditch myself, off the road but near enough to be seen, close enough to fix it and be gone before anyone started asking questions. But they asked. Boots crunched gravel. I saw them first. 2 soldiers, 20s maybe, fresh-shaved and square-jawed. One carried a clipboard like it made him important. "Ma'am, this is restricted territory," the taller one said, squinting against the sun. "You'll need to move this vehicle now." I didn't bother dusting off my jeans. Just sat up on the dirt and nodded toward the engine block. "Won't be long," I said. "Just fixing a belt. 15 minutes. Then I'm gone." The clipboard soldier stepped closer, his tone stiffening. "This is Army Reserve land. You can't park here. You can't even be here." I stood slowly, not to intimidate, just to level with them eye to eye. I pulled the rag from my pocket, wiped my fingers. My shirt clung to my back in the heat. "That truck breaks down half a mile back. You never know I existed," I said. "But it broke here, and I fix what I drive." They didn't like that. I could see it in their shoulders. The second one fidgeted, hand near his radio. I sighed. "I'm not a threat," I added, voice steady, "but I'm not moving until I finish this. I promise. 15 minutes. That's when the silence shifted. Another vehicle rolled up, slow and dust-muted. Not a Jeep, not some civilian SUV either. This was black, unmarked, government clean. The kind that knew more than it showed. It stopped 10 yards away. Door opened. He stepped out, mid-50s, steel gray hair, sleeves rolled up with purpose, a colonel by the pins. I saw the insignia as he approached, but his eyes didn't go to the truck or to the clipboard soldier. They went to me. He looked at my face, then lower to my forearm half covered by the rolled sleeve. His gaze landed on the ink there, a faded tattoo, a phoenix curled over crossed rifles, subtle, easy to miss unless you knew what to look for. He stopped walking. The soldiers tensed, expecting him to issue orders. Instead, he squared his stance and saluted, right hand high and clean. A salute not given lightly. The 2 soldiers froze. I didn't return it, not right away. I just met his eyes, let the moment hang in the heat, and in that pause everything changed. They didn't know who I was, but he did, and that meant something. I hadn't thought about Hellman in years, but when he saluted, the dust in my memory shifted. Not enough to bring back pain, just enough to let something old rise to the surface. Not grief, not exactly. Just that heavy, necessary weight I've been carrying so long I barely noticed it anymore. The colonel stepped closer. "Name?" he asked, not harsh, curious, deliberate. "Margot Stevens," I said. His eyes widened slightly, but he didn't say what I knew he was thinking. "Phantom Squad. The ones who didn't officially exist." He looked down at the engine and gave a slow nod. "Need anything?" "No. Just time." He nodded again, then turned to the younger soldiers. "You two step back. Give her space." They obeyed without protest. That salute had done more than my words ever could. As they retreated, I bent back to the engine. Not to work, just to breathe. The moment had cracked open a door I hadn't touched in over a decade. Inside the cab of my truck, tucked in the top left corner of the dashboard, just behind a cracked sun visor, was a photograph. I reached for it now with fingers that trembled more than I liked to admit. The photo was small, old, sun-bleached around the edges. 2 women in dusty fatigues, faces streaked with sweat and smoke. One wore a helmet askew, the other had her arm around my shoulder like we were just kids on a long hike. Anna Clark. She was taller than me. Braver too, though she'd deny it. Always grinning, even when the wind carried the scream of mortars through the valley. We took that picture outside a compound we just cleared. One of those nights where the silence afterward feels thicker than the gunfire before. The day we buried her, the world kept moving. Orders kept coming. War doesn't mourn the dead, just replaces them. But I didn't. Anna was phantom through and through. She believed in the mission, whatever it was, but she also believed in something most of us had already lost by then, truth. Not the political version. The kind you bleed for, the kind that burns your skin and still keeps you warm. The last time I saw her we were in Helmand, June 2010. She was quiet that day more than usual. We were cleaning weapons, prepping for what would become our final op together. If I don't make it, she said suddenly, her voice low, promise me one thing. I didn't look up. We didn't talk like that, not directly, but she kept going. Find out why. After all this, if something goes sideways, don't just leave it in the dust. Don't accept it. Find out why. She handed me her first aid kit. I remember frowning. What the hell do you want me to do with this? Open it later, if you have to. The op was a disaster, a trap, pure and simple, until compromise. We walked into it like sleepwalkers, ambush on all sides, RPGs from the rooflines. I can still hear the burst that caught Anna full in the chest. She was already dragging Corporal Vega to cover, bleeding from a shoulder wound. When it hit, I got out, so did two other. But Anna, she didn't. They said it was quick. I hope they were right. For years after, I kept that first aid kit in a box with the others. I never opened it. I couldn't. Then last week, in some backlit outside Elko, I popped the hood on this truck, and it fell out. Like it had been waiting for its moment, bounced off the bumper and split. The lining had peeled back. Inside the lining, folded so tight it could have been overlooked forever, was a paper envelope. My hands didn't shake then. They do now. I didn't open it until yesterday. Inside were two things. A small piece of cloth torn from an old map, and a note in Anna's handwriting. If you're reading this, you're still alive. There you'll discover why all this happened. No salutation, no signature, just those words. Just coordinates, scratched in pencil along the bottom, somewhere in the mountains west of Denver. I sat there in the cab for a long time, staring out at the Nevada scrub. Then I started driving. I drove east across the spine of the country, through towns too small for stoplights and landscapes carved by time and wind. There was no urgency, just motion. I stopped where I needed to, slept in the truck mostly, ate what I could heat over a camp stove. The envelope sat on the dash, folded back into the kit Anna gave me. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. The coordinates were already seared into me. Every few hours, I'd see the reflection of the photo in the dash glass. Me and Anna, arms over shoulders, covered in grit and blood and something like joy. It made the hours quieter, not easier, just quieter. Then the truck gave out. Somewhere between nowhere and Camp Cedar, it coughed twice and died without warning. A belt, maybe, or heat stroke in the engine. I coasted to the shoulder. Nothing but scrub and distant mountains. Camp Cedar was just beyond the ridgeline. I knew it from the topography. It used to be a listening post, then a reserve training base. Off the map, mostly, ghosted on civilian GPS. But I'd heard rumors about what it stored, what it was near. That was the kind of place Anna would mark, the kind of place truth would wait in silence. I left the truck where it landed and walked. Half a mile later, I was on the edge of the outer perimeter, an old wire fence, long since replaced by satellite surveillance and digital tripwires. The sign was clear. U.S. government property, restricted access. I didn't have clearance. I had a mission. There was a service road carved through the terrain, barely visible from the main approach. My truck didn't quite make it to the gate, but it was close enough to be noticed. I figured if I worked fast, they'd just wave me off. That's when the young guards came. I don't hold their suspicion against them. They saw an older woman under a rusted truck, hands covered in grease, parked on government land. To them, I was a nuisance, maybe a trespasser, maybe someone lost. They had no reason to know my name. The phoenix tattoo meant nothing to them. Their world hadn't been shaped by Helmand, or Kandahar, or Mosul. Not like mine. Not like Anna's. One of them pointed toward the truck. You can't stay here. Call a tow. It's not our problem. He said it like I was a roadside complication, something to move past. I didn't respond at first, just tightened the bolt on the fan housing. The tools clicked in my hand, familiar, grounding. I'll be gone in 15, I told them. They didn't like that. The shorter one stepped forward. This is restricted. That means you leave, or we make a call. His tone wasn't cruel, just impatient. The way someone speaks to someone beneath notice. I straightened up slow, wiped my hands, looked him in the eye. I'm not trying to cross your line, I said, but I can't move until it runs. I won't ask for help. I won't stay long. He turned to the other soldier, shrugged. Then she stays until someone clears it. Call it in. That was the moment I realized how invisible we become. Time passes. Wars change. Heroes age. Stories fade. It doesn't matter what we've done. The world forgets unless we make it remember. I leaned back against the truck and waited. Watched the road shimmer with heat. The sound of insects filled the silence. The envelope lay beside me on the seat, its weight louder than the engine ever could be. That's when the black SUV arrived. It glided in like it belonged, smooth and certain. The tires made no noise on the gravel. No hesitation, just present. He stepped out alone. No detail, no escort. Colonel Stephen Haynes. I knew the name before I saw the insignia. I'd heard it in passing once, whispers in the halls at Langley. A mission name scribbled in black ink on a debrief folder. We'd never met, but he had the look of someone who remembered things most people try to forget. He walked toward the truck without speaking, scanned the vehicle, then my hands, then my face. His eyes landed on the tattoo. He stopped. No confusion, no questions. He saluted. The two young guards stiffened, startled. One of them actually said, "Wait, what?" But Colonel Haynes wasn't saluting them. He was saluting me. The moment held. Nothing moved, not even the wind. He lowered his hand and spoke. "Captain Stevens?" I nodded once. His face shifted, not with surprise, but with recognition. The way you look at something long buried that suddenly rises to meet you. "Let's get you inside," he said. No fuss, no explanation, just recognition. The road up to Camp Cedar wound like a scar through the hills. No signage, just motion-activated gates and invisible sensors. The black SUV took it slow, tires whispering over gravel. Colonel Haynes drove in silence, eyes forward, hands steady on the wheel. I sat beside him, the envelope resting on my lap. Unopened but no longer hidden. The two young soldiers had stayed behind. One looked like he wanted to apologize. The other just stared after the SUV, confusion written across his face. Inside the gate, Camp Cedar looked like any other half-forgotten reserve post. Low buildings, chain-link fences, satellite dishes mounted on out-of-date towers. But beneath it, if the rumors held, was something else, something Anna knew about. The colonel pulled into a long row of parking stalls behind the main admin building. "You've come a long way," he said finally. I nodded. "Anna brought me." He didn't ask who Anna was. He already knew. Inside, the base was quiet, administrative. Men and women in uniform passed without notice, a few glancing over their shoulders. Nobody stopped us. Nobody dared. He led me through a set of secure doors, past a wall lined with plaques in forgotten commendation, then into a briefing hall, windowless, dim, with rows of folding chairs and a projector that hadn't been used in years. There were a dozen people already inside, soldiers mostly, young, alert, unsure why they'd been called in. A few officers stood near the back, murmuring. Someone had pulled out a small podium, dust still clinging to its base. Haynes gestured to the front row. "They're here for you." I didn't move at first, just looked at them. Faces like Anna's, like Vega's, like the ones we left behind. Eager, suspicious, still open to something bigger than themselves. I stepped to the podium. It didn't take much to speak. The words had waited long enough. "My name is Margot Stevens. I served in a unit called Phantom Squad. You won't find it in your manuals or your histories." That was the point. No reaction, just stillness, listening. We worked behind lines. No flags, no jurisdiction. Our names were scrubbed before the plane wheels left the tarmac. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope. This belonged to Anna Clark. She was my partner, not just in rank, but in survival. She died in Helmand Province in 2010, pulling one of ours out of a fire zone. I held up the envelope. She gave me this before that mission. Told me not to open it unless she didn't come back. I kept it closed for 15 years. The silence in the room deepened. I opened it last week. Inside were coordinates and a message. I unfolded the letter, the paper soft from wear. "If you're reading this, you're still alive," I read aloud. "There you'll discover why all this happened." I paused. No one moved. Then I said, "I don't know what's at those coordinates, but I know Anna. If she hid it, it matters. If she died for it, it's truth." The colonel stepped forward, standing just behind me. "I brought Captain Stevens here because some debts don't expire. Some voices don't go quiet, even after death. If what she's carrying is real, we need to follow it." A murmur moved through the crowd. Not doubt, something deeper. Legacy. I folded the letter again, slid it into my chest pocket. My hand brushed the photo still hidden inside, the one of me and Anna, grinning through blood and dust. "I'm not here for medals," I said. "I'm here because someone I loved asked me to find out why." The soldiers didn't clap. They didn't speak, but one by one they stood. A slow ripple of movement, boots against concrete. No orders given, just understanding, respect, where none had been offered before, recognition without needing permission. Haynes met my gaze. "Do you know how to get there?" I nodded. He said, "Then we'll help you start." No ceremony, no command chain, just the beginning of something buried being pulled back into the light. They didn't say much afterward. A few stayed behind to ask questions, quiet, respectful. Some just nodded at me as they passed, the way soldiers nod to each other when there's nothing left to say but everything understood. Colonel Haynes walked with me to the motor pool. The late afternoon light had shifted. the sky over Colorado pale and immense, stretching so wide it made the mountains look small. "You've got good instincts," he said. "I've had time to sharpen them," I replied. He didn't ask what I planned to do next. He already knew. But he did offer something I didn't expect. "We can authorize support," he said. "Transportation, comms, recon assistance if needed. You don't have to do this alone." I appreciated the offer. It meant something coming from him. But some roads can't be walked in formation. "This started with just me and Anna," I said. "It has to stay that way, at least for now." He gave a slow nod, not arguing. Then he said something else. "When I was stationed in Kandahar, 2011, we intercepted a burn notice, had Phantom Squad identifiers on it. One line stuck with me." He paused, then quoted it from memory. "The truth isn't buried. It's entombed in protocol." That line had teeth. I'd heard it before, scribbled on a whiteboard in a bunker outside Jalalabad. During a briefing nobody wanted recorded. He added, "If that envelope leads where I think it does, you'll find more than memories." The motor pool crew had brought my truck around. I didn't ask how they got it running, whether they swapped out the belt or just replaced the engine entirely. Either way, the hood sat flush now. The old Ford idled like it remembered what it was built for. I climbed inside, but before I could shut the door, Haynes leaned down and held something out. It was an old Greenfield journal, the corner soft, pages bound by a red ribbon. I didn't need to ask where he found it. "The glove box," he said. "Found it during the repairs." My chest tightened. I recognized the handwriting on the cover. Anna's. Inside I knew were coordinates, maybe explanations, maybe names, maybe something I hadn't been ready for. He didn't press, just stepped back as I closed the door. I sat there for a while, engine running, hands resting on the wheel. The bass behind me buzzed with quiet activity, soldiers moving across the tarmac in practiced rhythm. But none of them looked toward me. They didn't need to. This wasn't about rank or power. It was about debt and remembrance. I reached into my jacket, pulled the envelope again, unfolded the map. The location was still scratched in pencil. A stretch of elevation near Rocky Mountain Arsenal. A place scrubbed clean decades ago, or so they said. I whispered the words again. "If you're reading this, you're still alive." The phrase haunted me. Not like a ghost, more like a compass. I tucked the journal into the glove box beside the kit, then reached across and buckled the passenger seatbelt, a habit, but today it felt like Anna was riding with me. I rolled out past the checkpoint. The same young soldiers from earlier stood at the gate. They didn't salute, but they didn't stop me either. As I passed, one of them raised his hand in a small, hesitant wave. It was enough. The road beyond Camp Cedar stretched into the dusk, climbing into the high desert shadows. I followed it, letting the coordinates guide me, letting Anna's voice steady me. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew why I had to. Because somewhere in that mountain range was a buried truth, and the truth, once uncovered, doesn't ask for permission. It just asks to be seen. The coordinates led to an overlook above timberline, where the air thinned and the light took on that high-altitude clarity. Sharp, metallic almost. I parked the truck on a gravel pull-off and sat with the engine cooling beside me, watching shadows stretch across the valley. It had taken the better part of a day to get here. Roads gave way to trails. Trails gave way to guesses. But this was the place. The note was clear, hand-sketched markers, elevation data. Anna hadn't been guessing. She'd known. I stepped out into the cold wind. It snapped at the corners of my jacket. The sun was starting to sink behind the ridgeline, turning everything gold and then quickly blue. I found the trailhead about 50 yards off the road. Barely there, a few cairns of stacked stone, worn by time and weather. The first marker was carved with the number 42. I followed the line uphill. The trail wound through patches of snow and shale, over a narrow ridge that opened into a hollow circled by dead trees. At its center, half buried beneath rockfall, was a concrete slab. No markings, no hatch, just a flat, man-made surface where there shouldn't have been one. I knelt down, brushing away the dust. A rusted latch. Beneath it, frost. Anna had known this place, which meant Phantom had known, which meant others did too. I worked the latch loose with the wrench from my belt, fingers stiff with cold. The hatch creaked open, revealing a narrow shaft descending into darkness. No ladder, just metal rungs fixed into the concrete. I didn't hesitate. The air inside was still dead. My boots echoed against the metal as I climbed down, counting each rung. 32. I landed in a corridor of poured concrete. No power, no lights, just the faintest outline of old wiring and metal doors sealed shut. It wasn't a bunker. It was a vault. Anna had marked this place not because it was hidden, but because it held what she died for. floor. Room by room, I moved through it. Flashlight steady, dust rising with every step. Old crates lined the walls, military surplus, some labeled, most not. Maps, tapes, sealed folders marked burn after brief. In the center of the final room, a table. On it, a single case. Aluminum, locked. I placed Anna's journal beside it, then the envelope, sat down on the floor, and opened both. Inside the journal were names, not targets, not enemies, people, civilians, foreign aid workers, embedded journalists, local translators. Names Anna had written by hand, each marked with a date and a location, cross-referenced against grid squares I recognized. I flipped through. Halfway in, a photo fell out. A man in civilian clothes, mid-40s, standing beside a convoy outside Kandahar. I remembered the convoy. I remembered the explosion that took it out. I didn't remember his name, but Anna did. She'd circled it, and beneath it she'd written, "He warned us." No one listened. The case held files, declassified only by time and dust, operation layouts, satellite captures, testimonies, documents that weren't supposed to exist. Anna hadn't been trying to uncover enemy secrets. She was trying to expose our own. Not to betray, not for revenge, but because someone had made the call to leave good people behind, to bury stories, to erase truths that didn't fit the narrative, and she hadn't accepted that. Neither would I. I packed the files into my duffel. Not all of them, just enough. Enough to finish what she started. When I climbed out of the shaft, night had swallowed the ridge. Stars pressed down hard. My breath clouded in the air like smoke. I drove back down to Camp Cedar the next morning. Didn't need an appointment. They were waiting. The parade ground was empty. No press, no banner, just soldiers standing in rows, boots on gravel. At the center, a lone mic on a black stand. I stepped up, the wind tugging at my sleeves. I didn't speak loudly. Didn't need to. I told them about Hellman, about the day we walked into fire and didn't all walk out. About Anna. I held the letter in one hand, the journal in the other. These aren't relics, I said. They're instructions. The soldiers didn't move, didn't murmur, and when I finished, when the last word fell into silence, they stood in unison, dozens of them, and saluted. Not for me, for her, for the ones who stayed behind, for the ones who kept their promise, and for those still waiting to be remembered. I didn't linger. Ceremony had never meant much to me, and after the silence on that parade ground, there wasn't anything more to say. Back at the truck, the engine turned over without protest. I let it idle while I sorted the documents into order, journal in the glove box, the envelope pressed flat inside my map case. The last coordinate marked with Anna's ink was still etched in my mind, but I copied it again in pencil, just below the dashboard radio. Colonel Haynes approached as I closed the door. "We can send a team," he said. "We've got people who specialize in recovery, declassification." I stopped him with a shake of my head. "I've got what I need. You helped more than you know." He looked disappointed, but he didn't press. He understood. Some burdens aren't meant to be shared, not until they're ready. "I owe you a briefing when this is over," I said. "You'll have one," he replied. "Whenever you're ready." I reached across the seat, pulled out the ribbon-tied journal. The pages fluttered in the breeze as I turned to the last entry, written not by Anna, but in my own hand last night. Just 5 words. Truth matters. Still finding it. I slid the journal back into the glove box and shut it tight. The gates of Camp Cedar receded in the rearview mirror. Just a smear of chain link and morning light. I touched the envelope one last time. "Let's find it," I whispered. To Anna, to myself, to every name Anna wrote down, and every voice buried under protocol. The road unwound ahead, clean and waiting, and I drove toward it, carrying memory into meaning.